When I was 19, my boyfriend and I were arrested for taking pills. I can tell you how it was in Pennsylvania. I immediately met two women who gave me a spare pair of socks and comforted me in every possible way while I waited for my final verdict. It was very difficult for me to leave our cell, so I read all the time. Fortunately, thanks to these two women, I wasn't so lonely. Mostly the prisoners played cards and watched the reality show Cops. My boyfriend didn't get such a warm welcome, but he also met a normal guy there who helped him. As they both told me later, my boyfriend was immediately interrogated, which almost ended in a fight. According to them, the men in their prison were very aggressive and often fucked up representatives of other groups. They also played cards a lot and watched TV, but unlike the women, who did it together and calmly, the men always couldn't share something and poured shit on each other. I ended up in a women's prison at the age of 21. Upon arrival, you are immediately asked about your addictions. If you say you're addicted to booze or benzodiazepines, then you're hooked on 4 milligrams of clonazepam per day. I think everyone who has served their time is aware of this topic. For the first 2 weeks, I was in the addiction zone, and everything was absolutely calm there. There were some isolated verbal exchanges, but generally there was some kind of camaraderie between the girls, like, we're all in the same boat, so let's just help each other get through this. Everyone had to go to groups like Alcoholics Anonymous every day, except me. There were a lot of tears during these gatherings, because women with children missed their offspring very much and said they were ready to do anything to be with them again, especially now that they were sober. We lived in a 2-story trailer. It had several rooms, 4 beds each, a shared toilet and separate shower stalls. The strange thing was that every few days, an old electric razor was given to each bed. These days, there was always a queue in the bathroom for people who wanted to shave their legs and other more piquant places. Some girls turned the razor's sharp side down and used it, not for its intended purpose, let's say. It's a really nasty shit, so it never even occurred to me to shave there. We also had a microwave. Sometimes we were allowed to boil water in it to make noodles or make coffee. If you wanted to write a letter home, you could ask for a pen, paper, and postage stamps. We were also given pads, 1 roll of toilet paper, a toothbrush paste, and some kind of shitty shampoo or soap. In my free time, I could walk around the complex, go to yoga, Zumba, gym, library, alcoholics, anonymous meetings, etc. 2 weeks later, I was transferred to the maximum security zone. There was already a completely different building here, as technologically advanced as possible. There was only 1 bed in each cell, and most of the time the cells were closed. In my free time, I could go to the common room, where everyone watched TV for several hours a day. I no longer had access to hot water. In this building, if the girls refused to pay their bills, they were joined by child murderers, whom everyone shunned. One time, I didn't want to eat oatmeal, and one of these killers was attacked just because she wanted to take my portion. There were no more clubs or classes either. Only those who had served at least 5 years could return to the trailers for addicts. They were even allowed to have dogs later, and they could order any books in the library, not just the ones that others hadn't sorted out. And once I saw a girl's face being smashed against a metal door. In general, fights happened all the time. It was all so terrible. Okay, it looks like I'm the only one who's really done time here. Women's prisons are fundamentally different from men's prisons. Last year, I served 2.5 months, and my ex only served 16 months. Although there is violence in women's prisons, there is not as much violence as in men's prisons. Most fights happen when someone doesn't share a girl. Men have gangs divided by race, women don't have anything like that. If someone indulges in some kind of racist antics, they will quickly beat the shit out of him. Rapists, especially children, are not tolerated either there or there. If it turns out that that's what you're in jail for, then get ready to get the most out of it. There are a lot more same-sex relationships in women's prisons, but if you are definitely straight and don't want to participate in anything like this, then your opinion is usually respected. Sometimes, of course, there are some girls who pretend to be men and try to aggressively approach you, but if you make it clear that you are not interested, they will pull away. All women are treacherous, and convict girls are even worse because each of them has some kind of trauma that affects their mental state. They are capable of doing crazy things, which is why they end up in prison. There are many transvestites in women's prisons, both women and men. We were not separated in any way, we all sat together, and no one attacked or harassed them. To be honest, I do not know how they are treated in men's prisons. My ex and I have not talked about this topic. I was actually sitting pretty calm. You just need to respect other people and their possessions, then everything will be fine. However, do not forget that you are in prison. You cannot trust anyone there, and it is better to always keep your belongings locked up. I worked as a warden in both women's and men's prisons. I can tell you a little about how women and men react to emergencies and sudden problems. Men are much more violent and often use drugs. Although most of them drink Pruno, prison brew, their fights are usually planned in advance. All fights take place according to the rules of street gangs, so they are easier to control, in the sense that there is always some kind of judge, there is a specific place, and these fights are approved by the elders. If someone falls to the floor, they will not be finished off, only if it is not a child lover. The reasons for the fights are mainly debts, violation of some agreements, or banal disrespect. Prison staff are also attacked, but prisoners usually understand that if they create problems, they will be searched more often. They will be denied visits, and generally they will have to deal with angry officers. Therefore, if you are planning to raid the supervisor, then first you need to get approval from the elders. It is strictly forbidden to raise a hand against a female officer. I had a case where a whole gang of prisoners attacked another prisoner just because there was a rumor that he was going to attack me. Girls also have informal structures, but they are not so clearly expressed. Due to the peculiarities of the anatomy, it is easier for girls to carry drugs, which is why they have problems with drugs more often than with alcohol. Women's fights are more like brawls at school. They gossip more and yell at each other in a fit. But if it comes to a real fight, then they don't have a judge, and accordingly, until someone is seriously injured, the fight will not end. Kid lovers are not so much bullied here. The girls attack the officers without hesitation at all. Moreover, they immediately violently punch their fists in the face, grab their hair, and use all sorts of MMA techniques. And also, as for hygiene, men's common space is always cleaner than women's, but ladies' personal hygiene is better. I suspect that it's all about how the informal structures in women's prisons are organized. I'm a supervisor from Australia. I spent most of my time working in a men's prison, but I also had experience with a women's prison. The girl above, who wrote about her experience, described everything quite accurately. I'll just add that convict girls are much more likely to behave as if they owe everything. Unlike men, they don't understand the word no. They chat a lot with the guards. They get angry when they are called by their last name. It was said above that many of them have experienced some kind of trauma, but in my experience, I will say that almost all men either had some kind of traumatic experience or a sad childhood. Many criminals come from the same neighborhoods, so once in prison, they often already know each other. And yes, surprisingly, men's prisons are usually cleaner than women's prisons. Occasionally, of course, there are prisoners who talk more than they do cleaning. But mostly everyone keeps their cells clean and tidy. And if something is not clean enough, they will clean up without argument. And by the way, someone wrote here that in women's prisons, sausages are served only in sliced form. Haha, I haven't heard of it yet. But I'm from Australia, maybe we have something different, some cultural nuances.